Welcome back to the Soar Higher Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Ballard, and today we are privileged, absolute honor and privilege to have one of my favorite guests back on the show, Rob Johnson from Wayne Media and Speakeasy Podcast Company. Rob, welcome back to the show, buddy. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, my friend. Thanks for having me back. Glad to be here.
Yeah, you bet. There's just certain people, you meet in life and you come across and you just click with them and you just connect in different ways. And you're certainly one of those kind of guys. No matter what we talk about, we can be talking about pets or the beach or, business. And we just have, we just connect and we can just have really good conversations and have fun in the process. So it's always awesome. I just love spending time with like-minded people. So welcome back, buddy.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Actually, I just had the privilege of doing a show with our mutual friend Sean Lohman, and he actually, speaking of pets, talked about why you should have a pet trust in your estate. So. So that was a good time.
the things people normally don't think about throughout the day. He's a phenomenal person. We need to have him on the show as well because what he offers to people is phenomenal. He does it in a way nobody else does it, and he's got a couple of pets himself. In fact, the last time I talked to him, we're on a Zoom call, and I kept hearing this thunk, the thunk. And this noise sounded like a penny going round and round on the table or something, right? After about the third time I heard it, I looked at Sean. I was like, "Hey, man, what is that? Is like something going on in your house?" He looked over. He moves his camera over, and there's his dog. He's got this big, huge dog, and the dog's bowl was empty. The dog had picked up this ceramic bowl, picks it up, drops it on the ground, and kahoosh. And was basically trying to get his attention, like, "Hey, Yahoo, get off the phone and feed me. I'm about to go ballistic here." So anyway, it's all good. Well, today on this episode of Soar Higher, we're going to talk about one of the biggest challenges that I certainly see in business. I think you see it quite often in your marketing business as well. We've talked about this a little bit before, just in some casual conversation. But the 5 reasons that businesses, why they go out of business. Statistically speaking, Rob, I know you know this, but for the audience's purposes, about 70% of all businesses that start will eventually fail between years 3 and 5. Only 30% of businesses started will ever make it to year 10, and about 10% of the businesses ever make it to year 15 or beyond. So this is a really big challenge, especially right now with the Great Resignation and all the things going on in our world that we live in from a business and career standpoint. A lot of people have decided not to go back to work and create their own businesses, be a freelancer. A lot of people doing this. So I think, and I hope, that what we talk about today will be very, very beneficial and maybe help people in guiding them and making really good decisions so they're not the 70% statistic of people that go out of business. And so you're probably wondering, okay, great. What are these 5 main things, reasons why people go out of business? Well, the first one is they expect people to care as much about their business or product or service as much as they do. A lot of times they don't. The second reason is they overestimate their cash flow, how much money they're going to make, and really underestimate the expenses that come along with running a business. They always underestimate that. Number 3, they underestimate their expenses. I said that twice. Very important reason why. They underestimate their expenses. They really don't understand what it takes to drive a business in an efficient manner. And I know you've got a term for that. We'll get into that here in a minute, I'm sure. Number 4, they devalue networking, meaning they don't invest in relationships. They don't invest in connecting with people in the right ways to drive the attention they need to their business so that it can move forward. And number 5, they don't take the time in the interview process, and they don't take it seriously when trying to bring the right people into the firm. And so really powerful things, Rob. These are trending right now. They're the top, headaches that business owners are having. Talk to us about what you're seeing out there. You're in marketing. You deal with a lot of different companies in a lot of different stages. How does this resonate with you? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot of it. Like, I'm very much in the small business sector. So my office is in a downtown district, right on literally Main Street, and in a Grand River is our intersection. So we're right on everything. And what I see a lot is small businesses, really missing the mark on a handful or all 5 of those things. We'll get into them more, detailed here in a minute, but largely all of those just kind of summarize just a true lack of diligence, a true lack of oversight in the actual, they are very much in the operator role, not in the owner role. And when you're an owner-operator, when you're in the field and you're quarterbacking the back end of the business, you can't ignore one role. You can't just say, oh, I'm just an owner, I'm not going to operate. You can't say, I'm just an operator, I'm not going to own. And that's something that I think a lot of small businesses struggle with early on, because it's hard to set up those distinctions, because in the beginning you have to wear all the hats.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I see a lot of business owners struggle in keeping up with everything. They underestimate it. They normally don't have somebody like me in their corner, a coach. They got this great idea. Hey, I want to sell widgets. I want to make quilts, or I don't know, whatever that is they want to do, that they like to do. It's a hobby, and all of a sudden few people buy it, and all of a sudden it turns into a business. I met a guy recently that I think is going to become a client. We were still talking through some things and figuring that out, but he comes to me and he's like, hey, very entrepreneurial guy. I mean, he just sees opportunity. He's just an entrepreneur at heart. You can see it a mile away. He comes in and says, hey, I was doing window cleaning, and I was doing window cleaning for a pizza company, and they had a breakdown of their oven. They needed their ovens cleaned. And he overheard the conversation. He's like, well, I know how to clean ovens. I can probably do that for you. Well, that turned into an opportunity with a franchise that turned into 10 stores, turned into him talking to his other franchise buddies, and that turned into 20 stores. And now this thing has just boomed. It's taken off. He can't keep up with it all, and he's into QuickBooks one minute, he doesn't know his cash flows. He doesn't know when money's coming in, what money's going out, and he is stretched in 100 different directions at the same time and drowning in it. Very successful, but he's hinging on a danger zone there. So, do you have clients like that, Rob? Or do you have similar things? What do you do when you see people like that?
Yeah, so largely what we do is, especially on the marketing side, because we don't, we're not your typical marketing agency where we're just going to come in and do socials and then, shut the door and go home. I want to see the whole business holistically. And as much as a business owner is willing to share with me, I want to hear about it, because all of those details, even if they don't seem like they have much to do with the actual campaigns we run or the marketing or branding that we do or the creative that we make, that actually does. Because that helps inform us on customer demographics, or your target client, or just where the business can double down, where the business is at for bandwidth. So if you have 3 verticals and all of them are at 100%, why are we out there going to get you more business? Why aren't we trying to find out ways to open up that bandwidth so you can actually accept more business and serve them well? Yeah. So all of those things are really important. But for our clients, we've been super fortunate in that usually when clients kind of get to the stage where they're ready to invest in marketing, they have a lot of those things figured out. And for the ones that don't, very much like you've done. We've gone in and done some organizational development and tried to help them restructure so they can get into a position of actually taking on new business. Because like I tell everyone, I can make your phones ring all day long, but if you don't have someone at that front desk to answer the phone who someone can hear smiling through the phone, it's not going to mean anything.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You've what I see a lot. I want to get your opinion on it too. Is people are kind of in frantic mode in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
That things are happening, people are buying things, and like, hey, I need somebody to answer the phone. I need somebody to take an order. I need somebody to, figure out how much money we got in the account. I need somebody to do whatever. And they just, grab a neighbor, a friend, an intern, or, whoever, wherever. That's the easiest, person they can get into the company because they need them so bad. And they get in there and they're the worst person to answer the phone because they're the face and the voice of the company. You're like, yeah, I'd like to order some widgets. And you're like, all right, how many, when, where? Okay, thanks, bye.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was a horrible experience.
Yeah. Yeah, or they have a relative that used to do it 10 years ago, but they don't currently do it, and you never stop to ask yourself, well, why don't you currently do it? And then they're like, well, this person is going to be the one that we run with, I suppose, So that kind of goes into one of the bullet points as well, which is just not being thoughtful about your hiring process. So there's a lot of really good meat here. I think we can parse for some listeners.
Absolutely. So let's start with number 5, since you started kind of drilling in on that already. Sure. I think that's probably one of the biggest hang-ups that I see. And I've got clients, the family-owned business, and they go out and hire all their family members to work in the company, and it's a train wreck.
Yeah.
It's normally a train wreck at some point. One particular client, hired multiple family members to come in. They weren't trained, they weren't qualified, they have no background or experience in various aspects of marketing or sales or customer service and delivering things on time with high quality. And then they get and it's like the family members almost are worse because they take advantage of the owner more than the other non-family member employees, right? Yeah. They take advantage of them. It's like, oh, I need to take off early. I got to pick up little Johnny today. And there's, it really hurts the company in that sense. And so how do you, when you're working with folks from a marketing perspective and you see a disconnect there with the people, what kind of advice do you give them? How do you help people with that kind of a challenge?
Yeah, I ask them a lot of questions. So that's usually the first place I start, is because that way I can actually understand the full scope of the problem. So I would ask them, what is your interview process like? How many times do you interview somebody? What does your onboarding look like for the company? How long does that typically last, and what's included? Do you have any documentation or procedures written on these first two things? That's typically where I start, is what does the hiring and onboarding process look like for new people? And is anybody immune to that process? Meaning, like, if I had a family member come in, would they still have to go through that process? I hope so, but you never know. And that's usually where I start, because for us, like when we hire people, I just hired a new production assistant last week, and there was 3 interviews. There was a phone call interview and then 2 interviews beyond that. And typically the first and third interview are the exact same. That way I can see consistency in answers. So that's my process, and that's worked really well around here, and people seem to enjoy that, except for having to see us 3 times before they get hired. But we've broken that rule as well, and we found people that were great on the second interview, and we've hired them. There's no sense in wasting their time. But typically we want to have that process in place to ensure that we are not, like I tell everyone, everyone's been on a first date, right? And when you go on your first date, you're not sending yourself, you're sending your representative, right? You're sending your best, person out there. And it's the second and third date where the guard kind of comes down a little bit and you start to get to know the person a little bit better. And that's what we want to see. We want to see that guard drop, and we want to really get to know who these people are and if whether or not they're going to fit in the system that we've created here. And that's really important, because culture at the end of the day is what's going to get you across the finish line, not not just, how jazzy your product is, because at the end of the day, it's the people that are going to carry it through.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's powerful, and I like your process. It's very well thought out, and most people, when you talk to them in the small to medium sized business, organizations especially, they normally don't have a process. They don't like screen people up front. They're just slinging resumes around and trying to figure out who sounds good on paper. And so here's a tip for the audience that I'll share in addition to what Rob shared. Think about, it's not about the job description. People will say, oh, I got a job description. I put it out there on LinkedIn and you got 4 million hits and we're trying to figure out who's who.
Yeah.
You got to take it beyond that. That's not a good screening process, right? Oh. And so making the job descriptions great. You need a job description. But that only covers things like, how many years of experience, how much education you have, or how many certifications you have, right? It's basic requirements that you have to meet. It doesn't really tell the story as far as what exactly you're looking for.
Right.
And so I've developed a process called the perfect employee profile, where we got a nice job description, great. Now, what are you really looking for? Yeah. And break that down on paper where they can go through a process where they can circle, do you want somebody that smiles or not? Do you want somebody that walks with a purpose and is confident and strong, or do you just want, or is it okay if they just kind of hang out in the back cubicle doing their thing? Are they going to be in front of customers? Are they going to be in front of people? Do they have a good personality? Do they like to tell jokes? And I will methodically walk them through. It's about a 5-page document where you ask all these questions and it works.
Yeah.
I have been in many, many interviews with clients interviewing a particular important role, and you can just see when they walk in the room, you're like, that's it.
Yeah.
They don't even have to open their mouth.
Right. Yeah, and that goes back to the being thoughtful. How thoughtful are they being about who they're bringing in? And a lot of times businesses are like, well, I can't find anyone. And that's what annoyed me with this whole Great Resignation thing, when everyone was like, oh, we just can't find people. And it's like, well, that kind of speaks to your culture a little bit, right? Because if there's such a high competition and you can't get people to come through your door and work, that kind of speaks to what you're doing wrong. And then you saw, especially a lot of the franchise companies offering like these quick sign-on bonuses and trying to entice people really quickly. And not one person was like, hey, here's our long-term benefits of being with this company. Instead, it was like fast cash now. And like, that's not a way to build a company. And granted, some of those franchises, their turnover is just built in, because it's for younger people and whatnot, typically. But for the small businesses that I represent and you represent, there's something to be said for actually thinking about, if you were coming to work for you, what would you want? What would you want to hear? What would make you pick yourself over a competitor? And I don't think a lot of business owners go through that thought process of like, what am I actually walking into here? So like when people come into my office, I want them to see we have our creative studio literally up right when you walk in the front door. People are working, it's busy, it's energetic. As you keep going back through our very long maze of a building, everything is subdivided into pieces, and it's all super casual. So we've thought a lot about what customers and potential employees and really anybody coming through would think. And that's just something I don't think a lot of businesses consider.
So there's a story, a true story. Captain Shackleton from England, back, I think it was about the 1600s, was charted to go on a mission. Took him into the North Atlantic in some icy waters, and he needed a crew. And so he put an ad or whatever in the paper, and he was very direct and honest. Somebody needs to be able to work long days without sleep, endure frigid cold temperatures. He laid out a litany of things, and most people are like, oh my God, who would ever want to do that? Why would you say that? Because I think a lot of businesses feel like they need to put out this good feeling kind of job description thing out there. Oh, come to work for us. We're the most creative, wonderful, huggy, lovey company in the world. We'll give you bonuses. You can, come to work when you want and work where you want. And, they
just don't show up.
Kind of, yeah, you just make it seem like it's like a fairyland or something, right? It's not realistic.
Right.
And so the interesting thing about the Shackleton story is that he did recruit people, and they all went on the journey, risking life, risking, everything, really. It was they had ran into some issues, and they had to overcome these insurmountable odds, and it was kind of life and death and high seas and high stakes. And, if you were to understand, read the whole story, you'd be like, oh my God, this was a crazy mission. Who in their right mind would do that? But he filled every single slot. Every single person stepped up, overcome the issues, and conquered and completed the mission because he was very specific about what he wanted in those people. And he was very open, very honest.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of companies need to think about the honesty and the transparency of that, because then they'll actually attract the kind of people that can withstand long days, long hours, tough challenges, and the real realities of being in a small to medium-sized business. It's not corporate. It's not 9 to 5.
Yeah. No, I love that. And that's where, just again, hearkening back to one of our previous conversations, the transparency is so important. One of my recent hires came in, and during the interview process, she asked some of the most interesting questions I've ever seen. And all of that was predicated on the fact that the last place she worked for and then subsequently quit was because they lied to her during the entire onboarding process. Your job is going to be X. She came in, they made her do Y. You're going to make, A. She came in and made B. And so a lot of it was like, you're almost going through the process. You're like, damn, who hurt you? Like, what happened to make you have to ask all these questions?
Poor girl.
And then yeah, exactly. I felt awful. And then, as we were going through the process, she explained to me like why exactly, that these things were important to her, because she's been duped before. And that's why she gravitated towards our company. And she actually called me directly to set up the interview, because she saw kind of our culture online and wanted to be, a part of what we were doing, because it was such a hard left turn from what she'd experienced. And that goes to, back up Captain Shackleton's, mission of just being 100% honest with what you're looking for. Like, don't sugarcoat it. And for the love of God, don't tell someone that you have a family type environment, because no one wants that.
Yeah.
At least for me. I don't know how you feel about that phrase, but that always just kind of weirds me out a little bit. It's like a family. Like, how much like a family? Like my family? Like my extended family? I don't want to come into a place like that,
Well, some people's families are nice and sweet and huggy lovey,
right.
And some people are, some families are dysfunctional and kill each other,
Right.
So, a family environment can mean different things to different people. And that young lady goes into a family of dysfunction. She's not going to be happy for sure. So
yeah.
I just, one group that I think really masters this whole concept is the military, right? It's all voluntary. There's no draft. They're not, making people come in, right? It's all, do you have what it takes? We need you. Here's what we can offer you. Yeah, you're probably going to deploy to Iraq. You're probably going to have to go to places you don't want to go. You're going to have to make sacrifices. You're going to have to wear a uniform, cut your hair, shine your boots. Yeah. And some people look at that and they're like, I can barely get out of bed before 10. I'm not sure I want to do that. But it does set expectations up front about what this is really about. And what kind of process you're going to go through, what you're going to get out of that. And really, it's really trying to vet out people that really want to serve on a higher level, something that's part of something bigger unique, that's bigger than themselves. And I think the military does a really, really good job of recruiting people. The retention rate is usually pretty high. And them finding the right people. They don't wash out that many people because they have a good process from what I've seen of making sure they bring in the right people and they understand what they're getting into. They're willing to wear a uniform. They're willing to go to Europe or go to Asia or go to the Middle East. And so I just think be honest. Yeah. Really just be honest with people when you're talking to them about what you do, how you do it, and don't sugarcoat it.
I love it.
So let's move on to another one. They devalue networking. What is your perspective of that? How would you define that from your various engagements in the business sector?
Yeah, I mean, businesses are built on networking. Like, we can talk about advertising and branding and consistency all day long, but those things are not the primary movers of small businesses. The primary movers of small businesses is networking. And if you have great branding and great marketing and a great website and your creative's on point, all of those things help those networking efforts. They're all aids. They're all arrows in your quiver, if you will. But networking is the bow. Networking is, what everything is built on. And businesses will almost refuse to go out and shake hands and meet people and just explain what their business does. And I've always been a proponent of networking in the right sense. I'm not really a big fan of like referral groups where if you don't give one every week, we're going to take you out back and whip you. Like, I'm not a fan of those, but I do like networking from the aspect, especially for younger business owners. This gives you a chance to go and get in front of a room of people and explain what you do, which one, of course, helps get you and your name out there more, but it also helps you work on your pitch. It helps you articulate what that elevator, 1 to 2 sentences of what you do is, and you can watch how people respond to what you say you do. And that's what I really enjoy is that aspect of it, because it really helps you hone in that sales pitch. So networking should never be put to the back burner. It should always be a primary strategy for a business, because that is one of the most consistent ways that you can gain new business, new clients, and it's super important.
Yeah, I love that point. Let me ask you a follow-on question.
Yeah.
What would you recommend to small, medium-sized businesses that need to do networking, that need to kind of get out there more without the traditional, social media stuff? That's not really networking in what we're talking about here. Right.
That's a good distinction.
What types of networking would you suggest?
Yeah, obviously you and I are in a little bit of a different geographic region. So for us, up here in Michigan, we have, the chamber is, by and large, the primary focus for a lot of people here. And what I've found with the chamber is it's very much like any other relationship where you get out of it what you put into it. Like, you're not going to join a chamber and then not be active and see a ton of results. It's just not how it works. But for me, like right when I came into Brighton here, the first thing I did was called the chamber president and made a meeting with her. Went and met with her, explained to her what our business concept was, and she loved it. And for us, she wanted us to start producing the chamber show and all that jazz. So it just made a lot of sense. And we, have been doing that for over a year now. And that has led to more speaking engagements. That has led to, anytime there's like a ribbon cutting or something in town, they'll call me and ask me if I want to speak or, be present. And they also offered me a seat on the board there, which I accepted. So the chamber is really a good way to get in touch, and again, it's like any other organization. Every chamber is different. So it's a matter of who's running it. But typically chambers really want to see small businesses succeed. That's how they're able to run and stay open. Now in Louisville, you guys have obviously chambers, based on all the different, districts that you guys have floating about, but you also have, Greater Louisville Inc. And I think that's a part of Business First. Is that right?
Business First is separate. So Greater Louisville Inc. here in Louisville is kind of like we'll call it the metropolitan service area chamber that kind of hits on southern Indiana and then Louisville, because Louisville's on a river town. It butts up against Indiana.
Yeah.
And so it kind of covers the greater area. Now there are some sub-level little townships and cities like St. Matthews and E-Town, Bardstown. They each have their own kind of small town chamber that focuses on that area. But Greater Louisville Inc. is kind of the big umbrella of a chamber. It's it's chamber and economic development kind of mixed together. Okay. And so they have, annual dinners and, monthly networking events and cocktail social stuff, coffee in the mornings, like most chambers do. I have found chambers to be, well, one, let me point out, they have to be the right kind of chamber. Right. Not all chambers are the same. You got to find a chamber that is active, that's doing something that has good leadership in it, that's really good at connecting people and thinking strategically. I've been been a part of many chamber things. People have asked me to speak at chamber of functions and stuff and provide training at some functions, and it's great, but the leadership's kind of weak. They're inexperienced. They're typically not paid as much as the private sector, if you will, and so they sometimes struggle to really bring the community together, really maximize, the talent in the town. And so you got to make sure it's the right kind of chamber that's ready to do that. Because you'll spend a lot of time going to, little events that never really go anywhere. 10 people show up to a coffee thing and it's like it never goes anywhere. So qualify the chamber, make sure it's a good one that's actually, doing things and being productive and those kind of things.
And that's a good area where check out their social media. That's a really good qualification of, are they active on social media? Are they actually promoting the things that they're inviting people to do? And if they're not, then odds are they're probably not going to be that big of an advocate. Not that that's the end-all, be-all litmus test, but that's a really good one I found.
Yeah. No, it's true. Do they do a golf scramble every summer? Are they on a podcast? Or how connected and involved and engaged is the chamber? And more importantly, how engaged are the people, the businesses in the chamber? And so you kind of look at those things and size that up and make a good decision for yourself, because they're not all the same. What other types of networking events or types of things would you recommend to people, Rob?
Yeah, so there's a couple of them. Everyone I think is familiar with BNI groups, and largely these are kind of lead networking referral groups. For me personally, I'm not as big of a fan of those. Everyone has their own experiences with them and whatnot. I just don't like groups where I'm like committed to flip leads, and not every BNI is created equal either. That's worth mentioning. Locally, there is a really cool networking group here in Brighton where basically it's super casual. They want to make sure that you show up, or if you don't show up, you tell them you're not coming. That's just kind of a courtesy thing. But there's no expectation of referrals and leads and things like that. And for me, it's allowed me to have a lot of connections with people with no expectations. One thing I hate about networking groups is if I go and talk to someone, I don't want you to come and work with me, nor do I think you should expect me to come and work with you. I just want to learn about you. And if there's a need or if something fits, then that's great. So as casual of a networking group or a lead group or a brag group, whatever you want to call it, but casual is the key word, because anytime you have built-in expectations, people are more focused on what's in it for them, more so than the relationship.
Yeah, that's a really good point. BNI is great, but again, I know here in the Louisville area, just like most metropolitan cities, there's multiple chapters. Normally these things consist of 40 to 50 people. If they get bigger than 50, they're pretty much ineffective from what I can tell. But, out of 26 chapters here in the Louisville area, there's only a few of them that are really strong and really doing some positive things, where it's not this high pressure thing. It's a good dynamic of people that are just built those relationships. There's trust, and they're just automatically working with each other and leading people to each other in a very relationship based manner. That's kind of what you want to look for. If it's a high pressure, well, hey, you didn't give 14 referrals this week, you're going to be in the penalty box, and
Right.
we're going to penalize you for that. That's not a good place to be. Business First also does a lot of events. I would also encourage people to think about like associations. Every industry, every sector of the economy has an association or group out there that's tailored to them. And so you can connect to those through the chamber. You can connect to those, through Meetup or through some other internet-based, communities. And so learn what all of those things are in your community. There's one here in Louisville that's called NABO. It's the National Association of Women-Owned Businesses. It's a great group. I know a lot of females in it, and they get together and they're killing it. They're doing a lot of wonderful things. There's National Association of CPAs or dentists or lawyers or whatever. So find the ones that are really right for you.
Yeah.
And just go in there building the relationship. Just get to know people and take your time with it, not drag your feet with it, but do go in with the expectation of, I'm here to meet people. I'm here to learn. I'm here to ask questions. I'm here to understand. And not try to, be flipping my business card to every person that's, walking by, because it's you come across kind of salesy.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, this is very important for business owners, especially younger business owners. When I say younger, I'm not talking 20. I'm talking their first year or two in business.
Yeah.
There is a difference between socializing and networking. You've got to be careful there.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of business people that will go to all the events, the free events in town. Every night of the week, they've got a date. They've got their dress pants on and their shiny shoes, and they're at an event. Supposed to be networking, but what they do is just socialize. Just, hey, how's it going? What do you think about the weather? And what do you think, Tom Brady going to come back this year? And they'll talk about everything under the sun and not really understand what other people's businesses are and what they do and how they add value. So be careful not to socialize. Make sure you're actually networking.
That's a really good point. And that's kind of going back to, the dating analogy I gave earlier. That's where you really need to be interested in the other person more than you are in talking about yourself. And that's usually the game that I play is I want to get the other person talking more than I'm talking, because I really do genuinely want to know about other people's businesses. And then that usually reciprocates. So you don't want to go in there just to socialize, and you certainly don't want to go in just talking about yourself, because no one likes that guy at the networking party.
Yep. That's exactly right. There's the old phrase, be interested, not interesting.
Yep.
And I think that's important for people to know, especially if you're a certain kind of personality where you like to talk.
Yeah.
I learned this, sometimes I still learn this on a regular basis, because I am a natural talker, where I've really had to force myself to focus in on asking really good questions when I first start meeting people that drives them to talking, and you lead the conversation. There's a saying, those that ask the most questions in the conversation actually control the conversation.
Right.
And you want to try to do that. And so ask really good questions. Well, what made you get into that kind of business? I'd got to hear the backstory on that.
Yeah.
People talk 20, 30 minutes, and you just sit back and listen. You will get a chance to talk. You just have to be patient enough for them to go through their discussion points, and eventually you're waiting for that magic moment of, so what do you do?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like anything else, the more you get out there, the more you practice it, the more you do it, the better you're going to get. And that's kind of goes back to my original point of, being able to make that elevator pitch and explain what you do really succinctly and powerfully.
Yeah.
That's important.
I love it. Let's talk about cash flow and expenses. Why do people underestimate that stuff? Why are they not thinking enough about that? Should be the most important thing, but they struggle with it.
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think that's why it's important that they're listed separately. Is on the cash flow side, it's like how much net cash do I have every month to either A, reinvest, or B, do a dividend. And then the second one is expenses. When you look at how much capital are you putting out the window every month and why, _why, that can be a really powerful tool. So typically, back when I started doing financial consulting for businesses, I could usually always go into a business and find at least 10% in expenses to cut. Because a lot of it's either bloatware, meaning like software that you have and you have licensed but you currently don't use, or it can be consolidated into other applications. An example would be like, hey, we pay $20 a month per person for Microsoft Office, but we are in the Google Suite. Google Suite has all of the same tools. So why are you paying for both? Is there a specific reason you need Excel and Word rather than Sheets and Docs? If not, if you're not using them, then discount them. Just use your basic email and flip over to the workspace. If you have 10 people in the company, that'll save you, $240 per month times, 12 months. That's, almost $3,000 a year. So, you have to just think about things, and trust me, it's incredibly boring to look at all of your expenses and figure it out and find all the subscriptions. I'm not going to downplay that. It is, but it's also super important because when you're really tight on the expense side, you can put your revenue to work in growing the business. So when I always interview businesses and we actually talk about the organizational development side, do you have a statement of cash flow? Do you understand how that works? Do you understand how to read it? Do you understand how to read a balance sheet or a P&L? And then do you understand what your expense breakdown is? And then every time you add an employee or every time you add a piece of equipment, if you're a manufacturing company, do you understand how that affects that column? That way you can always prepare for expenses. So like for me, I know every time I hire a new person, I need to drop about $10,000 in equipment. So as a one-time cost to get them onboarded, whether it's cameras, laptops, headphones, portable drives, whatever it is, all that stuff. I can estimate about $8,000 to $10,000. So you have to know your numbers. And this is kind of going back to that point. If you wanted to consolidate it into one thing, you need to know your numbers really well. What's your gross profit margin? What's your net profit margin? And that's where having a really good team of a controller and a CPA, even if they're fractional, you don't need to have an in-house CPA or an in-house controller. That's super expensive. Source that out. Find a fractional CFO and run through it that way. But knowing your numbers empowers you to be able to grow your business much, much faster.
Yeah. Those that understand their numbers can master the business. It's like the game of sports. Those that know the rules of the sport the best can master the game and usually win more.
Yeah.
But I'm just always shocked at how many people don't know their numbers, especially when it comes to cash flow.
Yeah, a lot of it's fear. People are afraid to actually dive into it because they think they're going to uncover this problem and the IRS is going to come haul them off to jail. And that's just not how it works.
Yep. Interesting thing about the cash flow is it's not about cash flow. It's about how the process or the lack of discipline in the process for which you execute your operations and how that affects cash flow.
Yeah.
Have you seen that with your clients where they just are kind of disorganized and they just bill people all over the place and they have no forecasting, no predictability in what money's coming in every month?
Yeah, I have. And I've seen a lot of people kind of explain it away by saying, well, we're a very variable company in that we don't know what sales are going to look like month over month. This is very common with realtors or people that are kind of in that type of industry where they're commission based.
Mm-hmm.
And what I always tell people is, well, if you took the last, let's say you've been in it for a year or two, average it out. And if you make, $5,000 a month, or whatever it is, then just say that that's the goal and put that in there as a line item. And then every time there's an overage, save it. Every time there's an underage, you take out of your savings. And that's a really good way to keep the balance moving. And that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, but you need to have some numbers to start with. You can't just throw your hands up and say, well, we're variable. Sorry. I mean, Google is very much a variable company in that they depend on ad revenue. Do you think they don't have a forecasting budget? They absolutely do. And they have quotas to hit. And that's where, especially for small businesses, because the bigger you get, the harder this is going to be to do. So it's best to do it early. And you need to start with throw a number at a wall and then see how close you are and then keep dialing it in as you are tracking data, but at least start tracking it.
Yeah. Got to have a process.
Yeah.
Got to track it. Because if you don't have it written down, it's not trackable. You can't improve it.
Right.
It doesn't exist. If it's not written down, it doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, you can't improve it. And if you can't improve it, you can't grow it. You can't scale it. You're stuck. You're part of the 70% that will go out of business inevitably in the first few years.
Right.
See this all the time. And it's really, you're a fan of Jocko. You wear his hats all the time. It really comes down, if you want to be a successful business owner, I know it sucks to say this. It sucks to hear it, and people have misconceptions about what this really means. But it really boils down to one simple thing that I know and that's discipline.
Yeah. Just
being disciplined in different areas of your business is normally the deciding factor in whether you succeed or you fail. And so I think we've really had a great deep dive discussion today, Rob. You're always great to kind of peel back these onions and look at these different things, because you help so many people in so many ways with Wayne Media and Speakeasy. Kind of, all the things that you guys do, even though you do great marketing stuff, it all ties back to these kind of fundamentals.
Yeah.
And I think one of the greatest, blessings that, guys like me and you have in working with lots of different people is having some best practices to be able to get on a podcast like this and help people. Don't do these things, do these things, and you'll have a lot better chance of winning and succeeding. And by God, we need that. We need more winning, more succeeding.
Yeah.
The country's kind of stuck right now. The Great Resignation, all the things going on. Over 70% of our economy is built around small to medium-sized businesses. It's not large corporations, so we need more entrepreneurs getting out there, but just do it the right way.
Yeah.
Don't make the same mistakes over and over. Reach out to Rob and his company at Wayne Media and Speakeasy. They can absolutely help you. Reach out to guys like me that are coaches that work with different people in these situations, and set yourself up for success.
Yeah. It's
so go ahead, Rob.
I was going to say it's important, like when you talk about reaching out, like that's the single biggest reason I think that businesses fail is because they don't want to ask for help. They want to have this go it alone mentality, and they want to really focus on kind of their idea and not trying to get other people in their corner to articulate, especially people that have done it before, especially like you, where you have a track record of, helping businesses, whether it's going from good to great or go from just straight up terrible to now we're awesome, like whatever spot you're at, like you and people like you have been able to go in and successfully flip over a business into a positive way. And that's really important for people to understand, is that there are people out there that can and will help, but you, Jason cannot go out there and call everyone and be like, hey, how terrible is your business? Can I help? Like that. That's not his job. It's your job to reach out to the people that can get out there and help you.
Excellent point, Rob. folks, if listen to the show, nobody succeeds alone.
Right.
That's why sports teams have many people on them. Nobody succeeds alone in anything in this world. It always takes a village. It always takes a team. You're not a successful, I'm not a successful man without my wife supporting me. I'm not a successful in business if I don't have folks like you around me that support and are experts at what you do, doing what you do for me and others. It takes a team. It takes a village, as they say.
Yeah.
And so you have to put your pride aside. Most people don't ask for help because they don't want to look bad, they feel inferior, they are scared of the unknown, or they feel like people are going to look down on them and judge them if they ask for help, and that's absolutely the opposite effect.
Right.
The strong, the most successful people have people around them. You're only as good and as strong as the people you surround yourself with. All of the major players. Bill Gates had a business coach. All of the major, Alan McGlally from Ford when he was running Ford. A lot of these guys, they all had coaches. It's not they don't know what they're doing and they're stupid people and they have to have somebody come in and tell them what to do. That's not what that's about. It's about bringing people with expertise to the table that can augment the team and just make it stronger. And so put your pride aside. You're not going to know everything as a business owner. You're going to know and be really, really good at 2 or 3 core things. Let everybody else that's better at those other things come in and do that, and you'll go a lot farther, especially a lot faster. So, Rob, thank you so much for being on the show today, man. It's always fun and exciting. We always have great conversations, and you always really have good, sound, mature advice for the listeners that's just very down to earth and genuine. I think people get that. I know your clients get it. And, hopefully the folks listening to the show get a lot of value from this. If you have any more questions, you want to follow up with Rob, feel free to reach out to Wayne Media. You can Google that. I think it's waynemedia.com if I'm not mistaken.
You got it.
And Speakeasy, his podcast network. If you can't get a hold of Rob and you want to talk to me, you can also reach out to me at soarhighercoaching.com. And we Rob and I both offer free consultations to kind of figure things out, help you, point you in the right direction and what may be right for you. So thanks for tuning in today. Another great show. Hope you got a lot of value from it. Feel free to reach out through our podcasting channels and send us your questions, send us your concerns. We're happy to talk about those and follow up with you on those. So hope you all have a great day. We'll see you next time.